This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you.
We couldn't hardly hear you. Okay, so we'll just get this mic over to you. We'll share it.
We'll call the meeting to order in consideration of this evening's agenda. If there are no adjustments, we'll move on to item number 1, which is requests or comments from the public. If we have any public that's going to make comments tonight, just wanted to remind you, you'll have about 3 minutes. And please state your name and address at the beginning of the time. When you get close to the end, I'll give you a little signal to kind of wrap it up. I wanted to just remind folks that it might seem a little bit awkward, but since this is public comment time and not council comment time, we won't respond. And so that's why we're not responding, because it's your time to speak and it's not items on the agenda. But sometimes it feels a little bit awkward, so I just wanted to explain that up front. If anyone has any comments, they're free to come forward now.
John Sauer, 603 High Street. I was told that this deal we talked about last council meeting on this tree trimming service, that it's going through, and that if I had any questions, that it could be explained to me better why, it's going through. So I'm here to try to find out why. Is there anybody who can explain why?
So just to reiterate a little bit, we can't answer questions exactly during this time because it would interrupt your time. But staff might be able to, after you're finished with your time, so we're not interrupting, we could direct staff to just give an update on that. That's okay?
Yeah, because the reason I, ask is, wasn't even 2 months ago, the city administrator back at that time said that, it wasn't a street and there couldn't be a commercial business running out of a residential neighborhood. And then now it's a street that's going to be an unmaintained street, which I've never heard that phrase before, and that it is going through. So I'm just letting you know that, the neighbors up there and myself, are wondering what's going on. And on top of that, the guy that owns the tree trimming service, the Friday before our last council meeting, approached me and is telling me that it's going to be an unmaintained street and that it only has to go in front of the planning board, and they're only going to send letters to people within 200 feet. And it's like it was already a done deal before the neighbors even come down here. So like I said, it's just, I've heard so many different stories, and they're changing it from a street to a not street, and there can be a business and not be a business. And, the whole deal is just kind of, when you come down here and you go up front and you keep getting different stories every time. In fact, I requested a meeting with you, because I wanted to, you can't talk in 3 minutes. And they said, well, you don't want to talk to her, talk to the, somebody else. Anyway, my time's up, so thank you.
Yeah, we can answer any questions, Mayor, during council comments if you have any.
Okay. And so just to let you know, Mr. Sauer, we'll address that at the end of the meeting during council comments. We'll direct staff to give an update on that particular property and anything that we know to this point.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm Susan Eubanks. I live at 208 South 110th Street. And my comments are related to my taxes. And I have lived in my house for 25 years. I've kept it up. I've been a good citizen. I'm getting ready to retire the first of the year. And my taxes are going to be the biggest line item on my budget. And last year it went up 20%. This year it went up another 20%. I don't know where this is going. I don't have, my income's going to be limited next year. And I want to stay in Edwardsville. I love living here and I love my neighborhood. And I can't just keep spending if I don't have the money. And so I just want to plead with you all, please, when you're looking at this budget, see where you can keep expenses down because, I want to keep living here, but I can't afford the taxes. And so that's what I wanted to say.
Did anyone else have public comments tonight? No, there being none, we will move on to item number 2, the consent agenda, but we do have a comment on that before we have a motion.
Mayor, Council, just for clarification, as you well know, we've been going through an accounting process internally, and there were some payments that were not missed at our bank or at the city hall level, but they weren't in the statement of bills in the past. So some of this, what you're approving today, are things that have already been paid, and that when we corrected them, we are posting them. If we corrected them in August, they're showing up on the August report, if that makes sense. But they may have gone through the bank in January. We're just discovering these kind of general ledger errors. So I'll break it down for you. For January 2023, there was a payment of $125,135.88. For August 11th, there was a $60,544 payment. August 26th through September 8th, $104,392.36. So that total, which hasn't come through this particular process, is $290,072.24. But the total is, as it's stated, that $384,472.24, I believe. Oh, 04, sorry. So that is $384,472.04.
So that includes the charges that you just
Yeah,
mentioned?
those have been paid. They've cleared the bank. The money was there. These are budgeted items. They just were not entered into the ledger correctly, and they've been corrected since.
Is that correction from the financial person that we have?
From the accounting manager, yes, the accounting that this person is doing, which is different than financial management. That person is doing accounting, and that's where these come from.
I don't want to say the name, but you know who I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Could you tell us which page those different items are on, Chief?
Well, I can't.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, and the reason I can't, sometimes the best answer is I don't know. I was given a sheet from the accounting manager who was verifying these particular numbers of when they were posted through the bank and when they were posted to the general ledger. Okay, so they were making those corrections. So this is a report he gave to me today. So I just wanted to make a note to you guys that you're approving things that were not on the statement of bills that have already been paid, which is the way we do it anyway. We're paying them and then you're approving the statement of bills. So these were just caught through the audit system, which I think is a positive thing, and just getting this stuff cleaned up.
Would it be possible to make a note of that for the website, like for the minutes or the?
Oh, we sure could.
item?
Yeah. You'd like that on the website?
Yeah, just when we post the agenda in the minutes, we could just post a note on that for clarification for folks.
Yep.
So they know what those items were.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items 2A and B.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Adcock.
Yes. Bishop.
Yes.
Malak.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 3, consider certifying the fiscal year 2024 annual budget, which is brought over from our last meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen of the council. New but not new. So if you would, Chantal, would you go ahead and post the display of the presentation? And so what I've taken the time to do is pull all the data from what seems like 100 spreadsheets and try to compile them in comparing the data that was factored as well as presented. And they're trying to figure out the presentation. But essentially, you still have the options A, B, and C, because as staff heard it, you wanted to look at different options, which I think informed people have options, and you can make informed decisions that way. So essentially, option A, in most of its form, stays the same. Okay. Now, when you get a different perspective on some of the math, there are things like why is there a difference of $4,000, for example? And that's probably tied to benefits, for example, but it's insignificant in the overall picture of things. So A, in and of itself, it pays for all the benefits and the pay increases, 3% COLA, 3% step within their grade for each employee. It covers all the equipment and other budgeted items. 1 police officer for the police department, 3 full-time firefighters for immediate hires, and 1 full-time public works employee at 75% funded through the year. Okay. So in a sense, if you look at, we've got 100 million in valuation, 1 mil, about 100,000. We have all other revenue sources as well. So that's going to total up to about $7.7 million. We have a start fund balance expected in 2024 of about $1.26 million. And therefore you get your expected revenue. So you're taking your assets minus your liabilities. Okay, so we should end up with expenditures in about the 7.79 million, expected cash in the 8.9 million with an expected fund balance of 1.17. And that comes right at that 15% fund balance. Okay.
Explain that 100% and 75% difference on the.
Okay, so that's what I kind of mentioned. 3/4 of a year, we're staggering the full-time public works employee. We're going to hire them after the first quarter.
Okay.
So we're funding them at 75%.
Gotcha.
That's a savings of 12 to 14,000, somewhere in there.
Okay. Thank you.
But it makes a difference. Okay.
And is that no mill reduction?
No mill reduction. This stays at the 41.69 total mills, with 10 of those, 10 plus 10.141%, or I'm sorry, 10.41 mills, assigned to the debt service. Okay. So really in that package, nothing has changed. Okay. So if we can move on to B, is it acceptable? Can we move on? Okay, let's move to B, please. Thank you. Now this is a $0.5 mil reduction. What's important to note here is the pay and benefits requests are in place. All equipment and other budgeted items are in place. There's a police officer, 3 firefighters. So it's all 3. 1 hired at the immediate onset of the year, and in July, the other 2. It makes a difference. And 1 full-time equivalent, which is a part-time public works employee. So you could have 1 to 5 on staff, but they're going to work the combined hours at a part-time level of 1 full-time person, a full-time equivalent. Okay. So in a sense, you know where we are in the mill rate. This changes that because we're going to collect 1/2 less. We're going to have less expenditures because we moved we staggered the hires, and we converted a full-time to a part-time position, and you're at 15.1% which is within our policy of our fund balance of 15 to 18%. And that is option B, staggered with the firefighter hires. We still get the goal of getting them. From what I understand from Chief Whittam, he has a pool of part-time people who would be, probably applying for these jobs, so he can hire them day one, or they'll still be employed and trained and ready to go in July. So you still reach the goal of the request from the department head to add 3 firefighters, because you have shift A, shift B, and shift C. That's his request. And then the public works employee, we made arguments of the 4, some of the safety. There's enough job out there, enough tasks that they could put these folks to work. I would just point out, it's probably a challenge to get part-time employees, but it can be done. These are daytime jobs. That's one of the things that might be the challenge. It's got a competitive pay attached to it. Again, you're going from about over almost 60,000 to about 31,000, and you're going to have to hire probably a couple of those kinds of people just to fill the full-time kind of equivalent. Okay, Mary, you have a question?
So this does include or doesn't include the public works employee, this option?
That option has 1 part-time or equivalent of full-time employee that's part-time. So it could be 1 to 3 or 4 people, just depends. It's only about the hours and the pay. Okay, so about the whole amount there is about 31,000, just a little over 31,000. Okay.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, so a full-time equivalent there, or the actual full-time person, is going to cost you over 56,000 into the 58. Just depends on healthcare benefits, choices, that sort of thing.
I think you said it, Mark, too, that, finding a part-time staff for public works is difficult. So I guess I ask you, if we're going to be looking for 1 to 3 to 4 part-time people, if we go this route, your experience, how difficult is that going to be to try to find that person versus 1 full-time employee?
It'll be a challenge. That's the way I put it. Part-time work is starting to come by the work that we do. Not some of us. No one else is going to do that for the benefits. It's kind of a challenge, but like Chief said, it's something that can be done.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll move on to C. C is essentially what B is, except it's a full mill decrease, and you're pushing just slight under the 15. Now, we were conservative in all of our expected revenue sources beyond the ad valorem tax, the property tax. So we could expect to push that up to the 15% and maintain that. It just depends. There again, the risk there is that revenues might not trend as we expect them, but based on this analysis, we'll spend in about right just slight of 15%. And what this does is eliminates the part-time public works altogether. So again, you have to stagger hire. You get all 3 firefighters and the police officer, but no public works employees at all. And you're gaining. Remember, you're losing 50,000 additional dollars, so $100,000 in revenue, and by eliminating the part-time, you're losing about $31,500. That's where you're at. That's really the difference. Okay. Questions, comments?
The fund balance for this one's 14.9, so we're under the 15.
Under the 15, yes, ma'am.
If we did one of the July hires toward the end of the year or to January, would that put us over 15% to stay within our financial policy?
That number more than likely will trend at that 14.9. What the expectation would be is that you trend higher in all the expected other revenues. And for example, as we've stated, just from experience, it takes 4 to 6 months to hire a police officer. Therefore, you'll have a surplus there of some sort, which then would be essentially, if you think about it, returned as a surplus at the end of the year. So when you do all the math, right, assets, your liabilities, you could say that that's a $25,000 savings, and you could experience a 0.1% change upwards. But again, I think when we go into the reality is we're shooting that about towards that 14.9%.
So even if we hired the third firefighter in 2025, in January 25, that's still 14.
No. Okay. I follow. If we stagger as we originally proposed, if you remember, the stagger was one up front, one middle year, and one in 2025. What that shores this up completely. That puts you at about 15.1%, even with the 1 mil decrease. Okay? So you're erasing $41,000, or if it's a full year, it's 83,000 plus pay and benefits. So that's about where you're at. So in a sense that you erase the public works completely and you eliminate one full-time firefighter position for the 2024 budget, and then you're up above pushing that 15.1, 15.2 somewhere in there. Okay. And we'll move on, please. Okay, a little harder to see. Hopefully your screens are better than this one. I apologize stuffing it all in there. But okay, if we look at option A, this is all about stagger, delay, and hire in the next year. Right? So I think it's just more about the responsibility of budgeting. I think the concern has been 5 full-time employees is a big ask. We haven't done that in our history. The most full-time people ever hired were 2
In a year?
in a year. Yeah.
I was going to ask that.
And strategically, from the department head level, we would go into these budget meetings saying, okay, where can we shift this to make these numbers work? And the police department has done it, the fire department has done it, and the public works have done it, to where we've just said, hey, we'll take this off of the budget so that we can consider it next year, but we'd like the consideration. And that's how it's been done. So there may have been 4 people originally thrown at the kitchen sink, if you will, but that's always been reduced, because you take 5 years ago, putting 5 people on this budget agenda, we just couldn't afford it, quite frankly. And you've adopted a 15 to 18% fund balance. We've stayed within that for the most part of all of these years, and therefore don't want to deviate from that. So that's why we have always kind of a give and take, for example. And quite frankly, your 80 to 85% of all your funds go to personnel in every department. It's just the way that's the largest expense, other than very large capital expenses, which we don't necessarily have. So if you look at option A, this is all about part-time versus full-time, and delay a full-time hire to 2025. You're going to have pay and benefit requests that are included, all equipment and budgeted items, 1 police officer and 3 firefighters in A. It removes the full-time public works and adds a part-time public works for 15.4 fund balance remaining. And thus, what happens here is it's the 3 firefighters are still there in this particular one, but A, it's always factored that if you keep the mill levy as it is and not reduce it, you can fund all of these things. What we've done here is just add the part-time and remove the full-time of the public works to make the fund balance a little stronger. Okay. The option B is all about delaying. It's 1 firefighter, all the other requests, 2 firefighters, 1 police officer. These are January, July hire, and adds part-time public works. It captures all the expense of that 1/2 mil drop, and you're able to stand a 15.7% because we've eliminated over about almost $85,000 from that particular request by moving the firefighter to 2025. So you still, within 12 months, you would have 3 firefighters. The third one would just fall into the next year's budget. What that does give you is opportunity to analyze and assess where we are on the tax revenue and all other revenues by July, because we will be fully in the budget season in July. So therefore, you could delay that July hire if necessary, and you can consider the options of not funding the firefighter in 2025. Additionally, you might have an opportunity to consider a grant related to the firefighter service that they've applied for, which may fund one, two, or all three of those, depending on the circumstance and the award. Okay, so we're at 15.7. That's a pretty good position with $500,000. The sacrifice there is based on the request is that one firefighter has to be moved to 2025 and one has to be considered for hire in July of 2024. C again is the mill decrease, the full mill. We land there with all of these requests, the same as option B, with a 15.1 fund balance percentage. And the reason that is because we've reduced the revenue by an additional 50,000 from B. Okay. So essentially we're reducing the request, which reduce the expenditures. And then we're reducing the revenues by reducing 1 mil. And that's how you get that balance.
And that includes the part-time public works employee.
It does.
Would that be as of January of 2024 or July?
Yeah, it's budgeted for the whole year at a part-time rate. Again, about that 31 plus number.
Mr. Mathies, just concentrating on Edwardsville and not the rest of the county, isn't it true that we're talking about $3 a month for a $285,000 house from option A to option C?
Yeah, I think there was numbers previously presented about that $8 to $16 in that range.
Yeah, I thought it was 15, 14, 12.
Yeah, I think they've floated from here. It just depends on the option that you're looking at, what the tax bill will be to the citizens.
I have the numbers from that meeting. If
Yeah.
there was no mill levy change, it's $183 on the average household per year, $166 per year for the half mill reduction. And if we do a full mill reduction, they still are charged an additional $150 per year.
And is that the 20% that we can control? Is that what your
That's
numbers
just
are?
For Edwardsville, yeah, if
But the 20% that we can control?
that's correct.
Yeah.
So that's just the city of Edwardsville, like our mill reduction, not including what anybody else is doing.
Which is 20%, right?
It's about
20% of that.
23,
Yeah.
right about 23 cents of every dollar, 24.
Yes. And Mr. Bishop, I was referring to, I just caught my eye and I remembered that the total cost of the public works full-time equivalent in the budget is about $58,000, which that impact on that $287,000 house, that's the $16 I was referring to.
Okay.
And then if it's a half mil, that then reduces to the same as if it's a part-time equivalent, then it becomes $8 annually on that same one, just FYI.
Thank you for.
This is what I have, folks.
That's a lot of
I will
numbers.
turn it over to you, Mayor.
That's a lot of information, and I'm comparing A, B, and C to option A, option B, option C, and then original C. And
Yes.
so it's a lot to confer. What I appreciate in both of the C options is it affords as much of a mill reduction as we can responsibly really look toward, while still meeting the goals set in front of us by our department heads. What Mathies had mentioned earlier, which I think is important to point out, is in at least the last 16 years, our budget has never included more than 2 full-time employees in a year. And there's a reason for that. That's just for an $8 million budget. That's a lot to take on at once. And so I think that this stagger just makes it a little easier transition and is a more responsible look at how we can eat the elephant, so to speak, like a little bit at a time. But I appreciate that you're bringing us options that still would afford our residents that possible full mill reduction. I think that's what we've heard over and over again from folks that live here in Edwardsville, is that they need some relief in that tax bill.
I will add a few comments too. I know, say the city of Edwardsville is an employer. And to hire 5 people and find out in a year or two, well, I don't think we needed this many people. We don't have enough for them to do it. It's easier to add 2 or 3 instead of, and figure out if you need those people. CE, I'm sorry. I mean, Public Works, I think there's more room to be creative with outsourcing some of the work. The lawn mowing, the snow removal, we've done it. We've done it in the past. That it's a lot cheaper to outsource that than to have the equipment breakdown, paying the overtime. I mean, I know I make it sound easy. I know it's not easy, but I know we as a city have done that in the past. We've outsourced that. So cheaper doing that than paying a full-time employee and the benefits. And we only have 2 snows. Granted, that won't happen, but that's the chance you take. So I prefer to be a little bit more cautious and not have such an influx.
I'd like to comment on that. I have a little bit of experience with contracted help and hourly paid staff. There is quite a bit of a difference in savings. You have to look at, different variables when it comes to cost, but we want to take in consideration quality of the contracted help. I mean, we have contracted mowing right now, and as we've all seen, we've had some questions about, what they're doing and how they're doing the job. And that's pretty much every piece of contracted, staff that you can have. But there's something to say about having our own staff and our full-time staff, whether it's full-time or part-time. We control that quality, if you will, and they're vested in our community when they're working for us, versus an outside contractor that may just be mowing and getting that paycheck, and they may or may not weed eat. They may or may not pick up the trash when they're mowing, and we're talking about adding sidewalks, and I'm concerned about who's going to plow those sidewalks. Is it going to be contracted help, or is it going to be our own public works department? And the direction I'd like to the direction that I'd like to see is looking at doing some of this stuff in-house. If we have the department, if we have the equipment, and there is expense there, I realize that. But again, you can run the numbers on contracting a lot of that out. And it's most of the time it's higher, it's more expensive to contract, different items out. But I'd like to, for definitely just look at the numbers on it. And, when we talk about, increasing taxes, it's difficult to talk about. It really is. I lived here, over 20 years, and like somebody else said, about our taxes, they've gone up astronomical over the last 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, that's not us. That's Wyandotte County Appraiser's Office, doing those adjustments on our valuations of our homes. And we really don't have a whole lot to say about that, other than we don't like it. But like the mayor said too, we can control this mill levy by leaving it flat or half or 1. And it's a decision that we have to weigh pretty heavy and think about what's the best for our community today and then for the future. What we've all seen is everything is going up in price. I've said it before. I mean, everything that we buy, everything that we do is increased, very, very high, very much, by 15, 20, 25%. And I do have concerns about if we continue to lower the mill levy like we've done the last 7 years, and it's great that we've done that the last 7 years, but I'm concerned that if we continue to do that, we're going to get below our fund balance, which is going to be critical for us. And I'm concerned that, that we're just going to get ourselves behind. And I always want to trust our staff. If our fire chief says, he'd like to have 2 or 3 or 2 or 1, and our police chief said, we need 1 or 2, and CE says we need 1 full time, I want to trust your guys' judgment. I mean, that's your specialty. We're here to make the best decision possible on what you tell us and how you guide us. And that's how I'd like to leave it at that. But, and I'd like to make a comment about, the mayor's veto 2 weeks ago. I still don't believe we have judgment on that, or if that was, I don't know. I read it and reread it several different times, and I'm still very confused on whether, that veto stands. I don't think it stands, or otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it today. Or maybe, I don't know. I'm confused about that. And so if her veto didn't stand, I mean, don't we already have a majority vote, 3-5, on leaving it flat?
No, that's why I recommended last time at the end of all that discussion with the amount of uncertainty that we had, rescind any action that you took that night. I'm sorry, that you rescind any action that you took that night. So there's some space, to at least give me time to provide you with an answer, which
Right.
obviously you all received attorney-client advice. If you want clarification of that under the shroud of attorney-client privilege, there's always the possibility during this meeting of doing a short executive session just to talk about that more. But I think I concluded it last time that if there is any possibility of consensus, even if everybody doesn't necessarily get everything they hope for, that I think in the long run that would be not only in the best interest of the city, but also cheapest, because resolution of legal conflicts.
Oh, yeah. We don't want any part of that.
Don't want a part of it. And
Right.
I mean, you guys have the ability to control that, even though the stakes are clearly high, because we're talking about the most fundamental function of government, which is the ability to raise public monies in order to provide a public benefit
Mm-hmm.
in your jurisdiction. So this isn't ancillary to what you do every week. This is what you do all year.
I'd like to make a comment about that. We have never passed a budget with an ordinance in this town. Never.
Well, I'm sorry, I think I can provide some finality on that, even if it's just one portion of it. Which
Well, maybe
is,
we should go in executive session then instead of getting into a little fight here on the floor.
happy to, if there's a motion to do that, I'm happy to reserve.
I'll
my
make the
comment.
motion. We go into executive session to discuss this.
Pursuant to.
It'd be the attorney-client communication for legal advice. And that'd be for a period of, you want to start with 10 minutes?
Sure. Then we would have, and obviously us. You,
So consider a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 754319B2, attorney-client privilege.
so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver? Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Adcox?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Oh.
We're going right now.
Returning at 6:50.
650. And our attorney and myself, name?
Yeah.
Let me grab a key.
29.
This conference will now be recorded.
Come out, then recess back. Make the motion, come out of executive session. Ready?
We have a motion from Councilman Bishop and a second from Councilman Scott. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver? Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Adcox? Yes. Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Make the motion now to return to executive session. Same people, 10 more minutes.
Same reason.
Same reason.
Same reason. Same reason.
We have a motion from Councilman Bishop, a second from Councilman Scott. Will the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber. Yes. Scott.
Yes.
Adcox. Yes. Bishop.
Yes.
Block.
Yes.
This conference will now be recorded.
Make a motion to return from executive session.
We have a motion from Councilman Bishop, a second from Councilman Malat. Will the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Adcox. Yes. Bishop.
Yes.
Block.
Yes. Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve option B as presented to us.
Second.
And then, did we want any discussion? Did you guys have any comments or questions on that before we go to vote? No? Okay. I would just mention to some folks, as we're moving forward, option B just for the city, is about 100, let me see that. Option B is a $500,000 reduction. 1 full-time police officer, 2 full-time firefighters with the January and July hires, and adds the part-time public works employee. A $500,000 reduction increases the average household bill by $166 just for their Edwardsville portion of the tax bill. I'm hoping we can do a little bit better for our residents. I don't even remember. We have a motion from Councilman Malat, a second from Councilman Scott. Will the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber.
No.
Scott.
Yes.
Adcox.
No.
Bishop.
Yes.
Block.
Yes.
Veto. Guys, the goal
We're gonna
here.
have to fight it out right here then.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's okay. It's a public meeting and folks can be a part. We just had our mobile pantry last Saturday and we had record numbers of folks from our community lined up. Before we could even start the food line, they were to the train tracks. I realized that we want to add some staff. We're getting ready to vote on $250,000 in equipment. Our residents aren't buying new vehicles. Generally, these guys coming through the line are waiting 2 hours for half a trunk load of groceries. Let's try to work together to find a win-win scenario. I know we don't want to have to raise the taxes in a couple years. I feel like the budget that's before us with so many additions in employees will result in either a spike in the future mill levy and undoubtedly future layoffs. We won't be able to keep it up. I'm hoping we can work together to find some sort of middle ground there to provide a little bit more relief for our residents.
Madam Mayor, I thought that's what our option B, expenses was in meeting in the middle. I mean, and then, you the comment about the food pantry, I've made that comment or asked a question, when they go online to sign up for that food pantry, there's no information about where they live.
I did ask them.
I mean, there's
actually,
other information about the family size, and that's great, but I think it'd be important for me to know, and I think our citizens to know just how many people from Edwardsville, are in that line or getting taken care of that.
That's
Or
fine. I asked them all. I checked them all in individually, and I said, "Hey, are you from Edwardsville? Or are you from around here?" And the vast majority of families are from Edwardsville. And a lot of them are from right here behind us in Parkway subdivision right across the street. So it's by far.
so you think the majority of them are?
The vast majority.
Well, the three of us compromised compromised to a half mil. The other 3 votes haven't compromised at all, but I've 2 votes. But I'd also like to read statute 12-3003 in the Kansas State statutes, and this is an appropriation ordinance. The ordinances on which the mayor casts the deciding vote and appropriation ordinance, the mayor shall have no veto, and she shall sign the ordinance if presented at the meeting.
And
That's pretty clear.
just as we were told earlier, 12-3003 applies to council cities, and we are a council mayor manager form of government, so that doesn't apply to our form of government.
I disagree. It says right here, the mayor of a council city shall have the power to sign or veto any ordinance passed by the council.
We are not a council city,
We are a mayor council manager city.
which is not a council city.
But down below, later on, it talks about commissions.
We're also not a commission.
I know we're not a commission. I'm telling you, this is the law right here. It's in my hands. You can disagree with it all you want.
I said, what do you have to say?
Well, my opinion is that there are seemingly conflicting statutes and ordinances regarding the mayor's veto power. The mayor does have veto power in different circumstances. There's also the ability potentially to charter out of that, and there's an open question whether Edwardsville has chartered out. I have at least advised the council regarding the options of resolving the legal uncertainties. I'm happy to walk the council through what the legal process would be if there's a disputed legality of a veto, what it would look like to resolve that in the courts. And I certainly agree with Councilman Bishop that 12-3003 clearly states that in council cities, the mayor shall not have the power to veto appropriation ordinances, of which an annual budget is an appropriation ordinance. The sole question is whether KSA 12-3003 applies to Edwardsville as a result of 2 things. One, it's charter ordinances that went away from the city administrator to the city manager. And so a mayor council manager form of government, which is seemingly covered under 12-1039. And B, whether that 1039, since it does not address veto for mayor council manager forms in the same way that 12-3003 addresses veto power and the prohibitions on vetoing appropriation ordinances in council cities. It's an open question at this late hour whether who would be successful if this were challenged by action in mandamus in Wyandotte County District Court. Because if the mayor's veto is not allowed because KSA 3003, then the council just passed a valid ordinance. If the veto power is reserved through charter ordinance or through the switch in the form of government, then an action in mandamus forcing the ordinance would fail because a court could recognize that the veto power was valid and the council did not get 4 votes at this time to override that veto. So there's a legislative solution to the veto power to resolve it, but that would require 4 votes. And I completely agree that that's exactly what 12-3003 says.
So since we have to pass the budget tonight by Kansas statute, we're in a stalemate.
You are, and you either just did pass a budget
I believe we did.
or you passed a budget that was vetoed. And if this is the last train out of the station, if you can find consensus, but the courts will resolve this one way or the other if we have to do it, but that may erode any savings ultimately. I mean, I don't know. I can't weigh in on the policy of what budget you should pass. It's not my job. It's your job. But the legality of it is the legislature has not done you a favor.
And just to bring a little clarification further on, if you keep reading in the statutes, is the like sections 12-1036, 12-10A06, and those say that mayor clearly has the ability to veto any resolution or ordinance, and the only exception in those is a charter ordinance, which the budget is not. And so if our city falls under, and that technically, not to stretch it anywhere, is modified council, mayor, manager form of government. So we have statute weigh in on the modified council, mayor, manager form of government, and we have a statute that weighs in on a council form of government, the gray area. And so there's nothing saying definitively one way or the other on it.
That would seem to suggest, I think I've said this before, seem to suggest that the fact that 12-10A06, which applies to modified mayor council forms of government, which I don't believe we are. I think we're 1039 is probably the closest that we are. And there's caveats to that too. That 10A06 suggests that 12-3003 is not universally applicable because you do have separate veto language in the statutes that says all ordinances or resolutions except charter, and then in 3003 you have all ordinances except appropriation ordinances, and one other was a charter too.
It was that was pretty much it. The deciding vote in appropriation ordinances, the mayor shall have no veto.
So it's either of the vote splits could prevail in a legal contest. But
So I just want to make a few comments. So option C, we can still accomplish, I think, what the city needs. I know there's a part-time position next year. We deem it necessary. We will have to be creative. Next year, the bottom falls out. We're going to have to get real creative if we stagger these firefighters. Maybe keep the part-time ones. I'm not sure how that works, but I know Chief Woodham, we have a few part-time firefighters on.
yes, ma'am.
I feel if we can save our residents the most money, that's what we should do right now.
We've talked about it, debated about it too, and we heard from our residents and citizens for quite some time about our road conditions. Want more sidewalks, and all that takes time and money to do. And I think with either option A or option B, half mil decrease or leaving it flat, I think that we could definitely make some better choices and maybe make some road improvements a little quicker than on the timeline that we're looking at right now. And I also know, and I think our citizens have seen it, that some of our roads that we've repaired over the years, they could have been done a little bit better. And as you can see, none of the ditches or a lot of the ditches and the groundwater, what hasn't been addressed properly. And it's quite frankly, it's because of our budgets. Our budgets are limited on what we can do. And so, my hopes with leaving our mill levy flat for 2024 was to hopefully increase some of those areas in the general fund for, road repairs and ditch work. When we do future road work. Because I think that's important to do the job right the first time, and we get more longevity, out of our roadways. And then again, we've talked about sidewalks and a lot of different things. I know those are all going to take money to do that, and then also maintaining that. And as we plan this and think about, what we're trying to do and achieve for our community, I understand we need to save as much money as we can. I mean, I live here too, and we all do. But I really want our city to grow the right way and the smart way, and build a great community for our families and our children in the future. And I want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely. And I think, making sure our groundwater and the runoff is taken care of and away from our new roads that we're building and repairing, I think is a smart thing to do. And I don't think we've properly addressed those, in the past, just because we didn't have the budgets to do so. And I know we have a lot of infrastructure, sewer lines and wastewater that we need to, continually keep an eye on. So I think, again, Mayor, with all due respect, I believe our option B, with a $500,000 reduction is very fair. And like I said, I hate it. I know we all hate that increase, but we've all seen it across the board in every consumable item that we purchase. And again, what we're debating on and talking about is a, $500,000 decrease on 23% of what we control, in that mill. And we can debate whether, it's a one full-time police officer or two full-time firefighters, depending on when they start and the public works position. But that, I think if the money is there with this plan, we can maneuver, change, adapt how, whether it's when the police officer starts and firefighters start, all that's, doable, manageable with staff. But we have to have the funds there to do it. And again, I think the option B, expenses, and given the fund balance at 15.7%, is our best option for going into 2024 with the unknown of what could be happening. And Mr. Mathies, you said it yourself that, it's going to take a while to hire a full-time police officer. And Chief, you're probably the same boat about trying to, it's going to take some time for firefighters, especially good qualified firefighters, to match the young men and you have behind you there. So I'm pretty adamant about, trying to stay with that option B, and just maybe, if we need to tweak the staff, how we hire and when we hire them, I think the staff can manage that as well with guidance from us.
Make a motion to adopt option C.
Second. I had a quick question. If we can have just a little bit of discussion before the vote on option C. One thing that Councilman Scott brought up was the streets and the funding in those. Between options A, B, and C, are the streets or infrastructure funded in, differently?
We have the debt service fund, which is that 10.4 plus bills are dedicated to. In the general fund, which we're talking about now, there's only 30,000 of street maintenance money in this particular budget. Now we have special highway and we have special sales tax. And again, they're not impacted by this particular, so they have their own funding sources, if you will. And we're expected to spend about 455,000 on streets. And depending on the current analysis of what we intended to spend and what we budgeted to spend, I think it was 400,000-ish in several sources for 2023. I don't think we're going to get to that level, but we're intending to spend about 455,000, but that does include revenue streams from sci-fi.
And is that the same in option A, B, and C, or
It's
is
the
B
same.
less? Okay,
Yes, it's $30,000 in the general fund from the Public Works Department for, I would say, minor street maintenance and or a sign or some of those things.
Could those be increased, that $30,000, could that be increased with an option B or A?
No. I mean, unless, you're saying put another, say, it was 50,000 in the past.
Yeah,
And you're saying put that, say, 20,000 back in,
right.
your fund balance will decrease. You have to eliminate something, right? So if your revenues are decreasing and your expenses are increasing, right, there's where that fund balance percentage comes into play. So adjustment has to be made. And quite frankly, I don't know what the rationale of putting general fund money where you have street funds and special sales tax, because it is a 1/3 burden. If you think 100,000, 30,000, we're about 1/3, right, of a mill, if you will, in the general fund. That's been history. I can just follow that. That's all I know about it, really.
Right.
And so, in fact, it was more than that. It was a half a mil, technically, in the general fund, of $50,000 in the previous year. When they're now with the sci-fi, and even prior to that, you had opportunities to fund that through the entirety of the special highway fund. But again, I don't know the rationale behind putting that in the middle.
I just wanted to make sure, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding that if we went with the full mill reduction, that we would be investing less in our streets compared to A or B.
Yeah.
And that still
Oh, I didn't
gives
say that.
the police and fire the stagger of the staffing, it looks like. Do we have any other questions or
No,
concerns?
on, and B and C, you said the police and fire are the same, right? The staggers.
That looks like it, Chief. Could you,
Yes, and as stated there, what you're budgeting for, if you're going to finance is say a half mil decrease or 1 mil decrease, all the pay and benefit requests, all equipment and budgeted items, one full-time police officer, not staggered. It naturally is staggered. 2 full-time firefighters, one hired in January and one hired in July, and it adds a part-time equivalent person for the whole year in the Public Works Department.
So the only distinction is the fund balance then?
Yes. B and C. That's the distinction.
okay. We have a motion from Councilman Schreiber, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Adcox,
Yes.
Bishop,
No.
Malat,
No.
Okay, so let's see if we can find a solution here. It seems that we have some council, the focus is reducing the mill levy. Everybody wants to support some staffing. Councilman Scott, is the concern primarily the general fund balance, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with the fund balance staying at the rate shown here on this option B. Because this option B is different than last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, option B, isn't it?
Could you back up to?
The fund balance looks different on this one here.
Yes, because what you have to do is subtract one, add some back in.
Yeah.
It just depends. We talked about all 3 firefighters, even on the staggered quarter, the money really comes out about the same. So
I just want to make sure that we're giving staff the most options when it comes to staffing. You know, I don't want to sit here and claim to know what CE knows or the fire or police chief know and our police chief captain knows or needs.
Would you, and I don't know if everybody would be comfortable with this or not, but is there somewhere in the middle that we can meet between B and C that everyone would be comfortable with? I feel like we're just stuck in the middle.
one more.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. So there again, this is really about, this is 3.
Yeah.
Remember, this is 3, 2 of them mid-year on the firefighting side. So there's where the big change comes in, is
Right.
you've added expenses and you've lowered revenue.
So on your new option B, that would be 2 full-time fire departments instead of 3
Right.
and staggered out.
Yes.
Chief, are you comfortable with that? Chief Witham?
I work at the mercy of the city manager and the city council. You tell me that it's what I have to take, it's what I have to take. I made my recommendations through the budget process was for the staffing recommendations of 3 personnel. However you tell me to execute that, I will execute that.
Okay. Thank you.
So in this particular B, you have everything. The only drastic change you have here, drastic if you will, is you're gaining half back to your fund balance of a full-time public works. So modified to a part-time.
Mhm.
So this is the full gamut. It does give you a half. It puts you at about 1.10%-ish, somewhere in there. It's tight. You're going to be right at 15.
And
And
I
again,
think,
if revenues don't come as projected, there's your slide back into that 15.9.
right, I think that the concern that I have with it is in years past, staff has brought to us 1 full-time employee request per budget year. Maybe 2 at the most, but generally it's 1 per year. And this year the request was 5. And when our residents are hurting so much financially, and I know everybody is, that's why we're really not talking about the 6%. We're not talking about the 3% step and the 3% COLA. And I feel like that's been kind of a council compromise across the board, and making sure we're taking care of the existing staff we have. We don't want to bring too many staff members on at once and then have to look at a huge mill spike or laying people off. And I feel like that's where the staggering and the looking at, okay, where's our staffing goal and how do we get to a staffing goal instead of throwing it all in one bucket, shows a little more financial discretion. And so that's what I would have preferred to see is staff come before us with a long-term plan. We really hope to get 5 full-time employees over the next 2 or 3 years instead of 2024. I think that's a little bit easier for the budget to withstand. That's why the staggering, I think that we were presented with helps so much as it doesn't take it all at once, like we first came up with.
I think it's going to be a staggered effect, just natural stagger anyway, just trying to find, police officers and fire guys, and, whether it's part-time or full-time public works people. And we've heard it 2 weeks ago in our meeting about, the desire for the North Station to become maybe a north, just call it the North Hub or North Station. So I don't know how, our fire chief would even try to accommodate some kind of a North Station with the staff and with the equipment that he has today. I don't know that he can do. I don't know how he could do that next year if we don't look at those kind of options and thinking about, option B with these staff numbers and equipment.
I don't think that we would be looking at a northern station within the next year anyway. So I think that
Well, we
staggering
can plan
them
today
further.
for it.
But what we're looking at, what I can tell you from numbers I had from Zach from last year's budget, is our payroll budget for 2018 was 2.6 million. 2019 was 2,743,000. 2020 was 3,016,000. 2021 was 3,033,000. The payroll budget that we're being presented with this year is 3.6 million. So that means we've gone up for an $8 million city budget. We've gone up a full $1 million in 6 years. And that is not sustainable. That is not something that we can continue with.
You could look at that in several ways. It could be that, we were behind the times and, we weren't where we needed to be in the past. I know that we have a great full-time police or full-time fire department. Other cities around us have a, volunteer or part-time, and they want to do exactly what we've accomplished. You know, we've got a great city, great plan, great staff. And I believe right now our staff is underpaid, if you want to ask me. And I'll tell you that I believe we're underpaid. Not us, but you know, our city staff. I mean, we can debate it all night long, but
Well, and that's why I think that none of us are the pay isn't really what we're trying to hash out here. And I think that's one thing
I'm
that
saying
we're
just
putting in there is the
if we
6%.
have the most, or the option B gives our staff, the people that we trust to make the best judgments for us and tell us what we need, it gives them the most options to do the best thing for us and for our citizens, in my opinion.
Well, I think our staff though has given us 3 options. Our staff's given us 3 options, and one option meets the goals of staff, but also gives our residents a full mill decrease. And I think that's the compromise, and being able to help our residents with their burden of taxes right now, but still meet the needs of our city. We have that option in C.
What is the dollar amount per month that we're talking about between B and C?
$16.
For our residents, how many dollars per month is we talking about?
Between B and C is about $16. Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. It's about $16
$16 a month?
total.
Yeah.
That's what we're debating?
And that's in addition to the $16 a month last year, and the $16 a month the year before that, and then the $50 a month the county's going to throw on them, and the $50 a month
Yeah,
the school's going to put on them.
I get it. We're feeling it too.
Yeah, and those are the numbers that I brought last time, and not to hit it too hard, but if every taxing entity that affects the people of Edwardsville leaves their mills the same, leaves them level, the average household, according to our county assessor, will go up $850 a year. And so we have other entities around. Lansing, it went revenue neutral. Bonner reduced their staff, brought to them a 2 full mill tax reduction because they're reading the room. They're saying, okay, we can't expect more from our residents right now when they're hurting so badly already. And so we're not asking for a 2 mill reduction. We're not asking for revenue neutral. 1 mill is minimal when we're looking at the payroll going up $1 million in 6 years. That's quite a bit of an increase. I think we need to find somewhere that helps the residents a little bit more.
Well, I believe I've compromised. I came off the full mill. I'm sorry, but I don't see any compromise for the other 2 votes.
So we've got a half a mill
So this is funny?
and
I
a
don't think
full
it
mill.
is. It's pretty sinister.
You are. Okay. We've got a half a mill option, a half a mill decrease, and we've had some with a full mill decrease. Maybe we can find some options, Chief, that meet in the middle, perhaps, if we've got a council willing to try to work this out tonight. And I'm hoping that we do. Let's see here. One recommendation was potentially, I'm trying to look, let's see, we have C is 1 full-time police, 3.
Yeah, these first slides reference 3 firefighters hired in the same year. The stagger ones that had all 3 of the pictures on there are about modifying either part-time, staggering hires, pushing 1 full-time firefighter into 2025.
Can we see those where it has the 3 on the same one, please? Yes.
Now, Mayor, if I might, a couple of things. And have here with me, I know there was some mention about some of the staffing assessments and things. I recently gave to you folks in one of my Friday memorandums the information from the fire chief regarding the area staffing. And that's one piece that he uses to then justify where we should be as well. So we did some comparative information. Bonner Springs proposed, I verified that through their city manager, that their minimum staffing will be 5, they hope for 6, and they answer about 1,600 calls. Very similar setup. They're going to be a fire-based EMS service. So if there's a comparative there, but they have to hire all these people, for example.
And what's their population?
Is it 7,900? Is it somewhere in there?
And their budget, do you know their annual budget, just for comparison?
No, I don't have that in front of me. Will, do you know their annual
Their
budget?
fire department and EMS budget is going to be comparable to ours because everything is based off our work schedule, equipment schedule, and everything else.
I could say currently, it's not near where ours is because they run a volunteer part-time and some full-time mix of EMT people. So, now that's one piece of it. The police department, I'm speaking, forgive me from speaking it from that podium, if you will, but we did an annual assessment for 15 years about our staffing needs. It's pretty elaborate. Mary, you've worked through it with me personally in years past, and that's a full 6-8 pages of data driven. Now, every year I can speak from as a department head formally, right? Every year we came from this assessment saying, is this the time to put this in? Okay?
Excuse me.
We competed for grants. We've done everything. We did add one over the last 4 years. And then what happened with the police department is we moved, because we wanted to be competitive, not to belabor it, but we moved scheduling. We did some other things benefit-wise, and we went to the 410s and one piece of our schedule and things like that. And when we fall short of being able to staff that, we have to cut that schedule back to full 8-hour days, okay? So that benefit goes away. It varies on the number of people absent from the schedule, not only just absent from the job, but people who are on sick leave, they're having babies and doing all these things, and training and things. So that was a full assessment. Those kinds of things came from this assessment, and we know where we should be targeting over these last few years of adding one additional person. That's what they're missing right now. So right now they have 2 vacancies, and they already had to scale back from their 10-hour shift. So one of the priorities was to bring it forward this year, because we didn't bring it forward last year, but through a grant program that we were not awarded. And so we said, nope, we're not going to pursue it, even though the money potentially was there. But what I can offer you is, if the priority for the fire chief, as he mentioned, was to staff up his A, B, and C, we're looking at 1 full-time hire in 2025 after a budget assessment in July of next year. Swap those positions. We could put the policeman to the 2025 budget and make sure that we get all 3 of the staffing, should you choose to do so. The money is about the same. So what I'm proposing is that all 3 firefighters, it's on the stagger method, all 3 firefighters are hired, and the policeman is delayed to the 2025 year.
Chief, can I sidebar with you for about 7 minutes real quick?
7 minutes?
Just about, it's that long. Give me about 2 minutes inside.
Well, this is the mayor's meeting, so I don't know if it's,
Sam, if you don't mind.
I don't,
That's fine.
okay.
Well, she was losing me.
Mayor, is that fine? You didn't say
She
yes.
looked at me and I was
Yes.
I know.
Do you think
Yeah,
it's worth the
I think
conversation?
we can have
Okay.
some conversation while you guys maybe come up with a great solution. Oh my goodness, this is uncharted territory.
How it should be. Change it. We need to be able to staff that fire department up north, that whole room full of people worried about north fire services and ambulance service. People not wanting public works up there, and then we're trying to cut the mill levy so we can't afford to pay for all of this. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And a lot of these
So
other,
what, if Bonner lowered theirs, they've got revenue out the butt up there.
yeah, they have
The
Walmart.
cash register
and-
everywhere. We've got people down here in the industrial park that are paying 70% of the taxes here, and when you start cutting the mill, they're the ones that are gonna get the advantage of it. You're talking about them saving so much money, when you're saving residents this much money, they're saving this much money. I mean, you gotta look at that whole broad picture. I feel sorry for people and I have to pay the taxes too. I'm sorry about that. Good grief, they go to Riverside Red X and buy cigarettes and wine up there to save $2 or $3.
Not everybody.
People deserve this.
I guarantee they do. And while we can do it, why can't we save them that money? $16 a month is a lot of money.
I've met in the middle. And you're asking for a middle ground. There's a middle ground right there.
But I'm not
That's where
saying,
I'm standing.
I'm not saying that it wasn't a conference. Nobody's gonna win up here anything. Nobody is gonna win. I'm not even running for election this year.
I'm
Oh my
looking, well, you
gosh.
got 2 more years.
I'm looking at something that we can do right now. Accomplish what our departments are asking us to do. It's not about winning. It's not about winning up here.
This is not a strong mayor.
It's not.
No, you're right. Yeah.
It's not about any of it.
Yeah.
So,
Mayor, if I may, just a minute, the sidebar was more about, there's a couple of revenue streams that the fire department has in plan. I know that Chief Whittam wants to propose in November a fee schedule change, which would include billing for accidents that are not involving any residents of the city. There's a model out there for that. And then there's a couple other things, but one of the things is we've been involved in a number of wildland fire efforts throughout the state, and that's a reimbursable expense, and that does offer itself as a revenue stream. We would just simply have to have some dedicated resources to it. But that's for future conversation. What was suggested, though, in that we keep things as they are, but target looking and that all hires at the fire department for the full-time move to July. And the thinking there is we can assess whether or not we're in a position then to hire just the 2 or go ahead and hire all 3 for a mid-year hire. Now, there is, of course, some savings there. The 1 mil reduction is easily because you're saving the front end of that, all of that money, of course, half of it. And so that 15.1% is probably going to look more like 0.2, 0.3-ish, somewhere in there. If you add revenue as well as stagger the hires, he's still targeting 3 for the year. However, we can reassess. We will know that by June. We'll have 6 months worth of data, and then you can make those hires. Then, how he's going to manage it between now and then. Number 1, we're waiting on the grant. Number 2, he's got part-time employees, and he has adequate funding in the upcoming budget to continue with the part-time employees, and they're supplementing in to mass up the crew in numbers, as well as supplementing in when we have people who are off. And so he does have a pool of those. It's pretty strong, as I understand right now, and still he could recruit more of them. It takes a number of them to equate to 1 full-time person on that 12 or 24-hour operation. And so what he's suggesting is there's 2 revenue sources that he's going to propose later on. We don't have them now. We can't guarantee them. But in the sense that we stagger those, the 1% comes into absolute play with a stronger fund balance at the end. And so I think that's a good place. It's not something he and I considered at first, given what his needs are. But I think he's made a good suggestion. So that's something to consider. I know you got a lot on your plate.
so would that be just a modified option C?
Modified option C. What we would do here is you have a 1 July hire and a January hire. You move all of that to July.
And the fund balance would be approximately?
I mean, we're calculating, you gotta add in another, about 41,000+. But at the same time, you gotta account for half a year of another one. But so it's gonna be about that 15.2, 15.3. It just depends. And it really becomes, again, it's not just about what our expenditures are, but it's about our revenue. And Chief Whittam seems to think that there could be a revenue stream as long as we can collect the revenue with some of these changes that he's proposing. So if that would be added revenue.
would the additional percentage in the fund balance be, whether or not we get the added revenue? Like just from the stagger, the general fund would be still better than the 15.1, higher than the.
Yeah, if you just leave it as is and just make that July change for all three of them, yeah, I think without any added revenue, I think that suggestion is there would be a better probability, a higher probability of having more revenue.
I appreciate us getting creative and trying to find some solutions, and I think that's a great option to consider, especially when we're, again, hitting the goals of our staff and giving our residents a mill reduction.
I agree. I kind of made a comment up here. Nobody up here is going to win anything. Nobody here is winning anything. Our goal up here and what we're elected to do is make the best decisions for the city, work with our departments, work with our department heads, hear what they need, see what they need. And as I've said many, many a times, try to be creative with everybody the best way we can. I cannot thank you enough, Chief Whittam, that wonderful, hopeful solution to what we're looking at. So make a motion to adopt option C with the
Staggered firefighters to July.
and a possible fund balance of 15,234
I'd say 15.1 plus.
plus.
I think that's safe. What I'll add here is the math is we're about 166 with the firefighter staggered. If you put them all in 1 year, to do it this way, we save $37,750. So, it's like slight less than 40, not quite a half, but you're reducing it another half from B. So it kind of covers it, in my opinion.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion from Councilman Shriver and a second from Councilman Adcox for Chief Whittam's option C modified. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Adcox,
Yes.
Bishop,
No.
Malott,
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, we will keep working. Is
And I
the,
get creative.
Yeah, I did see, I'm sorry, I saw a text from CE who's suggesting that we forego the public works position altogether. So if you take C, that's another $31,000 in addition to the $37,000. Now you're over $500,000 covered completely. And of course, that only goes up as you go to option B. He also suggested foregoing the truck. But however, there are different funding sources and they have nothing to do with this general fund. So, and the truck is needed.
so Chief Whittam and CE's modified option C, what would the general fund balance?
Well, you're gonna add about
Guesstimate.
60,000, let's see, 37. Oh, and I got the battery power down. We may have an attorney suggestion as well. Everybody's gonna get in on the suggestion.
No, I'm not going to suggest anything. I'm going to mention something and I'm going to plug your phone.
We've asked our staff to jump through hurdles and hoops for years, and we have an opportunity to give them the staff that they believe that they need for the future of Edwardsville. And they're jumping through hoops again.
So hopefully we'll respect that in their suggestions.
Right.
Try to
Well,
understand the
if we
solution.
respected their suggestions, we'd be looking at, option A or option B. I mean, I've compromised. I mean,
I am so concerned about 2024 and 2025. I mean, what I don't want us to happen, if we continue to send in this trend, what we've done the last 7 years to reducing that mill to point for another full mill in 2025, 2026, we're going to have to potentially increase 2, 3, 4 mills, which would be unheard of and be disastrous. Because we don't know what the future is. And I really want us to take care of the staff, the people that we have working for us. I want to give them the most options, and I can't say it enough. I want to give them the most options instead of making them give up staff that they believe that they need. If they didn't believe that they needed 2 full-time or 3 full-time or a full-time public works, they wouldn't ask us.
Respectfully though, we can't have it both ways. We can't say we're worried about a mill spike and what's going to happen in 2024 and then insist that we hire 5 full-time employees all in January of 2024. We have to make compromises, and it has to go one way or the other. We're looking at brand new municipal buildings, fire department, police department, city hall. We're looking at a 3% increase in COLA, 3% increase in our steps, so 6% increase altogether over the last 5 years. If we pass this, that'll be a 21.5% increase for our staff and pay. We're looking at the next budget item is going to be $250,000 on equipment.
And they're still underpaid though.
We're looking,
Mayor, they're still underpaid.
we're about on target actually.
They're still underpaid.
Our studies that we've done, when we redid the pay structure last year, we got on target for our pay. And if we do the 6% increase, we should be where we should be along for cities ourselves.
Well, I remember 3 or 4.
Our taxes, the average household, according to our county assessor, 2017, their taxes were $2,948. And based on 2023 at the 2022 mill rate, that's now going to be almost $4,700, $4,693. That's a $1,700 increase in 5 years. So while I understand we have to take care of our staff, we are elected by the residents, and we're here for the people that have elected us and to be that mediator between the people and staff. And staff are here representing themselves, and they're doing a great job, and they're giving us great creative solutions that hopefully we're not going to turn our back on when they're saying, hey, we found a solution. If we're going to trust staff, we need to trust staff with those solutions that they're bringing to us. And we have an option that staff has put before us saying we can help the residents and we can fit our long-term goals. And I think that is worth considering. So I believe we potentially have a modified option of C, which would be CE, and Chief would have modified option C, which would increase the fund balance potentially closer to maybe Chief's doing the math on it still, I think 15 point.
Almost 16, a little over 16.
Wow.
What we're going to give back is 69.4. That drops the total expected expenses 7.6 million-ish for a fund balance of 1,280,000. So it pushes about if you're looking at your expenses towards a cash fund balance, that's over 16%. So that's a pretty good change, because what happens is you're eliminating that 30+ thousand plus another 37,000 by moving those to a mid-year hire. So you're funding 3 positions only half the year. So that's about where we should be. So you're moving from, I think that says 1.1 to almost 1.2. That's kind of where it's at.
Chief, if we get into 2024 and it's looking pretty good because CE has offered right now pulling public works off, that we get into the financial forecast, money's coming in, it's looking good, we could always bring that back in.
Absolutely. I think if you look at Q1, you give us 3 quarters, we know how the year ended. We're going to go into the audit, right? We should have an audit report by May-ish, right? So we should be in pretty good shape to make better decisions, to include whether you want to hire all 3 of those or any of those that you staggered. You could do that as well. But what this says is you're going to decrease the mill, pay for everything else, 1 police officer and 3 firefighters in July, and no public works. That's what that says.
Do we feel like council would be supportive of the option C, Mr. Goodall and Chief Woodham modified?
I would.
I don't want our guys to give up. I don't really, if, like I said, I trust what they're telling us in the beginning, and we're asking them to make reductions. I'm concerned. I have concerns.
Councilman Bishop?
Ditto.
We can revisit that next year.
Yeah, they're not going to be here next year, I can guarantee you.
If I might, and Mr. Matisse kind of alluded to it, there are options that, I will be bringing forward towards the end of the year that is talking about another $60,000 to $100,000 of potential revenue stream coming in. And when you sit there and look at that potential revenue stream coming in, as much as people sit there and seem to think about taxes, I live here. I'm in the same boat as everybody else is when I bring a budget forward. There are certain areas that I have to be prepared to say, this is the staffing I've needed. I've needed these additional 3 bodies for 3 years. I understand that. I also sit there and deal with the tax bill that is going up. It is also my fiscal responsibility as a department head to operate with that and to find alternative sources for the governing body as well, i.e. alternative revenue sources. That is part of my job as well. My job is also to help provide you information to get you over that hump, the potential sources of that revenue income stream. So on that side, you're talking about potential revenue streams that we are internal of the house within the fire department side that can offset some of our expenditures on the fire department operating side to sustain that staffing model that we need to bring that in, whether it's i.e. setting off the part-time staff that kind of reduces some of that pressure off of the general fund, whether it's bringing in some additional funding that sits there and brings off some of the general funding for equipment. Those are items that, as a department head, we are expected to do. So that is my 2 cents on when we sit there and talk about potential revenue streams that are coming in and where is the one that sets at when we're sitting there trying to provide our expertise as to where we can feel confident that we have presented to you 3 alternatives to the budget, as well as Mr. Matisse, to help give you guiding factors. What we understand is you all have a decision to make, and we have a decision to make. We all 3 still answer to decisions you come up with. But at the end of the day, we have sat down as staff and come up with solutions, and we all have the same concerns everybody has. We are still going to sit there and do our due diligence when we sit there and look at presenting anything. We have got internal control measures such as our own strategic plans, our own benchmarks, earmarks. So when we sit there and present budget processes, it's not where we're just going in and saying we want the kitchen sink. We've identified these positions for potentials of years and put them all. And although it seems like we're getting hit with it all at one time, it's not where it's all been hit at one time. It's been trying to find alternative sources to it. And we've watched where our general fund balance at the end of the years has said we've tightened our strings here, we've tightened our strings there, and we're continuing to tighten our strings as we move forward with it. So again, like I said, there are other alternatives that we are going to address at the fire department side that may sit there and potentially alter the revenue coming in by that almost mill that you're talking about. That would be offset from here on the future out. So let's look at 24, because I can guarantee you staff is going to start again as soon as we start, like we do any other year, looking into the 24 operations into 25 and 26. I have people that continue to call, what's it going to take for the north end? It's going to take 3 people for the next 2 or 3 years to sit there and even start looking at a north end. It's going to take more development with that. Our goals here and the recommendation that we're making is to help you get over the hump tonight, along with Mr. Mathese's recommendations, to get the body moving forward, to sit there and make a decision so we can sit there and start working on 24 through 25 and into 26.
I think just a quick note, that was, the number I gave you originally was B, I'm sorry, but it's 50,000 less, so that fund balance should result out at 1,230,000, so 50,000 less than the number I gave you.
And what
If we move,
percentage is that?
that is 16.1. It was dead on, but yeah.
16.1 fund balance with option
Yep.
C.
Yeah, you're giving back, so you're giving back almost just short of that 70,000, and from B to C, that's an additional 50,000 in reduced revenue, but you're somewhat giving it back. So,
All right, we'll clarify what you just, not what you just said, but how the hiring is going to happen. Just clarify that.
from what I understood, the discussion that Chief Whittem has agreed to was we'll have all 3 firefighters hired July. So you still get them all in the same year, but the funding is then just half for the whole year of all 3 positions. You eliminate the part-time public works person. That's giving about almost 32,000 back. And you still have all the other benefits that you're funding, pay and benefits. It's a 1 mil decrease, and you have 1 policeman that will be funded. And I wouldn't expect, just based on experience, that would be first quarter a person there, but you're funding for it. That's essentially what's happening. Does that make sense? So the savings, what you experience is you're somewhat taking out of expenses about almost 70,000, and from B to C, you're adding an additional 50,000 reduction. Okay, so a total of a little over 100,000 for an entire mill, okay, in C.
And then that way we're hiring all 3 firefighters like Chief would want it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the added benefit of that is some of that unknown we've talked about in several conversations, is that we would be able to assess where we are in July, and we could start that with the audit of this year in May, more than likely delivered in May. We have July, we'll be full in swing of our budget, and you'll have a couple of quarters reported to you, updates of the progress of the budget. So there's a lot of information you could use to decide that all 3 of them, or, hey, we just better stick with the 2 and hire somebody in the 25. You could do that. So that at least would give you opportunity to study the information.
And is that also the C's proposal of no part-time? Or does that include the part-time option?
I was advised that he was willing to eliminate the part-time position altogether and reconsider a full-time in 2025. He's going to bring it back. The need still exists. Otherwise, we wouldn't have never proposed it. So just FYI.
If you'd like.
Huh?
If you'd like, we can, like Chief had mentioned, we can reassess that public works position as well as once we get the year going and see
In
what
July?
the finances are.
So
I
full
mean,
time.
maybe even sooner.
So
Or, well,
right.
part-time or
Well, I
full-time,
mean,
it depends where we are. I mean, not necessarily, it depends on the finances.
Right.
But I wouldn't say, Chief Matthews said, if everything's looking favorable, then we can reassess that even in the spring if we wanted at a part-time or, well, I mean, we don't know. We'd have to look and see. But it's not something that we say, hey, we can't do this. We're not putting it in the budget now, so we can't discuss it later. It's something we can pull back in if there's a need in the finances to cover it.
Yes, you're not hiring anybody today. You have that option to withdraw as a policy body. If the funding isn't there, even if we did it today in January 1, it wasn't there. You always have the option to reverse that. And it's our responsibility as a staff to say, hey, we expected to hire these folks. However, that money isn't here. And so that's, at least it gives us 2 quarters of reporting and potentially the audit by July, that we have all this information. You could say, yeah, we can much afford it and just move on from there.
So then could we add in that we would look at least the full-time if we can afford
The public works position?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would still be almost the same money as the half part-time person. So you're looking about 30,000-ish, 31 at mid-year because, with benefits and all that. So if you added a full-time person mid-year, you're looking at that 32,000.
But obviously what we could afford.
What we could afford, yes. You would be able to look at the numbers and make a policy decision.
Would anyone want to try to move forward with the modified options of Mr. Goodall and Chief Whittem, option C?
I'd be more looking at option B. Sorry. I guess I'm just terribly worried about the future, and
What's maybe we can find
I
what's the difference?
I don't want our guys to not get the staff that they need.
So what's the difference in B and C that in the staffing that that you see that we can work toward? What's the difference in staffing in B and C that you'd want to change between B and C?
The biggest thing for me is the $500,000 decrease in the fund balance rate, and then getting the staff that the guys need.
Okay, well, I think, so B and C as they're presented are the same staffing.
Pretty much.
So it's really the general fund balance and the mill decrease.
Yep, $500,000 decrease for me personally. Because again, I wanted the most options for staff.
I don't know if we'll get consensus here, so I'm not speaking for anybody else. Can we
Essentially,
do a modified BC like a 3/4 mill and meet in the middle, and then have the staff, because I think the staffing option's the same, but then that would be the true compromise between B and C. Is that something you would consider?
I think so.
No.
Say that again. What was?
Consider
The compromise between B and C. So the staffing's the same in the proposal of B and C, but do a 3/4 mill right in the middle. So it's a compromise between the half and the full.
What about a 3/4 and keep the public works part-time? I don't want him to lose staff. He's working his rear end off with what he's got. Everyone.
Isn't that what you said though?
What the fund balance would be on that 3/4?
yeah, you're gonna. So
I mean,
in
just
between those two, right now, if you look at it, just what we proposed, if you move all the firefighters to July, that helps. Even if you add back, so by doing that and eliminating the public works position, just think of those as 1% increases in the fund balance. That's how you see that. So why that goes up to over 16% is you're collecting $50,000 more in B, and you're spending $69,400 less by that option. Same, and then we move to C. Okay, it's the same scenario. It's just more money not collected.
So I think the questions that I've heard is if we keep a part-time public works in there by doing a 1/4 of a mill reduction from the full mill reduction, that saves approximately $25,000. So that hopefully would make up some of that funding toward the part-time public works. I'm just trying to find a middle ground here. Unless we want to move in,
Big,
but
and we're trying to do everything we can. I would be willing to move a little bit, but I want that public work at least part-time.
If you add the public works in on B, again, if that's a full year, which there's no sense in not doing that, you're just right about 32,000. If you just think of easy math, 32,000. So then you're gonna fall to about 15.4. You can afford it. That's the 15.4 is a solid number, percentage-wise, is your fund balance in option B.
well, we're looking at those at 3/4 mill.
And a
right in the
3/4
middle.
mil. So you got to add less money there and add more money reduced there. I just have to start the math,
Sorry.
It can be done. You're just going to be in the middle of those two if you just
How much
really
was
think
the-
about it.
How much was the part-time public works employee?
It's, if you think of 32,000.
32,000.
Yeah,
So
all year long.
A quarter of a mil is 25,000. So we are
Mhm.
$7,000 different.
Yeah, and
basically.
your percentages are not going to, because what you're doing is, the way you do this, if we're talking about this creative piece of it, you're moving your firefighters to July, you have to do that first,
Yeah.
right? So then
Are
you
you-
just,
you
all you're
good with
doing
that?
is adding back in.
2 or 3?
3.
So I mean, if I'm hearing this correct, let's just call it option B.2 or
B.2.
B and a half.
B and a half, yeah.
Option B and a half. So we're looking at 1 full-time police officer, 3 full-time firefighters in July, and 1 part-time public works.
All year.
And then that's a 3/4 mil reduction, and that would leave a fund balance of just roughly maybe 15.5, give or take. I mean, looking at the middle.
I think that's fair.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I make a motion to go with option B.5, B.5,
With the mill reduction of.
3/4 mil reduction.
Okay, explain that on public works. That's part-time with the
Part-time.
option of being full-time if it can be afforded.
Well, he didn't say that.
Yeah, I
Doesn't,
thought we
it
said
doesn't,
earlier.
that doesn't have to be included.
Well, that could be
You can-
budgeted.
You can bring that to us anytime.
If you're
Time to be
asking,
looked
could
at
this
budget.
body have consideration once we have all the data and if you have plenty of
Yeah.
money and the public works director
Yeah.
can
We
justify
can
it?
look at
I
that.
think absolutely. I think part of the argument is we don't have any formal justification, though
Right.
we've talked about it. So that gives him that opportunity
It doesn't, right.
Right.
Doesn't have to include that. He
Right.
can, he can do that anytime.
anytime.
Three-quarter reduction. I'll second that. We'll see what happens.
Any other
It's not going
questions?
to pass, but we'll try it.
Better to call a vote.
Okay. We have a motion from Councilman Scott, a second from Councilman Follett. Will the
Okay.
clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
What did he say?
Yes.
What did he say, no?
Very.
We're so used to.
Sorry,
no's.
guys.
Okay, so I understand. Yes.
Let's
Yeah,
move on
there you
fast.
go.
Sure, guys.
Move on quick.
Everything within charge.
Does everybody have it down what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay,
You're gonna charge,
As long as you do.
well, yes.
charge tickets to the meeting next time.
Yeah. I would do the math, but it is dead. So on this last one. So sorry. Okay.
Item number 4,
Item number 4.
consider acquisition of fire department and public works vehicles.
Chief is going to lead the discussion. We did not pull any public works.
No,
Nope.
no.
Please proceed.
We did not, sir.
Well, that's all right. I think that's all right, Jerry. Mayor, council members, before you tonight is authorization of purchasing 3 vehicles, 2 for the fire department, 1 for the public works, on the Mark contract price. These are part of the 2024 budget acquisitions for both the fire department and public works department. Shawnee Mission Ford's contract price for the 2024 Ford Super Duty truck model per the Mark bid price is $50,666 for the F-250 Super Duty fire department vehicles. The total cost of the purchase, including outfitting the vehicles with the necessary emergency equipment and technology, is $145,332. The fire department's funding for this source will come out of special sales tax. Shawnee Mission Ford's purchase price for the F-550 Super Duty truck cab and chassis for the public works department is $63,556. Total cost of the purchase price, including outfitting the vehicle with the necessary dump bed, snow plowing equipment, is $92,638. Remember, the Mark bid pricing allows us to lock in the 2024 bodies at the 2023. The fire department is requesting the purchase of 2 because we sold a vehicle in 2022 that was supposed to be allotted in the 2024 fiscal year purchase along with the replacement of a 2017 vehicle. So we set off a purchase that was supposed to occur last year into the 2024 along with the normal scheduled 2024 budget. The 2024 budget for the fire department vehicles is coming from the special sales tax fund. The purchase from the 2024 purchase for public works will be out of the general fund that you have just voted on. That was the equipment purchase.
Is that true, Mark? said that was coming from a different source. Was it not coming from
Well, I understood it was coming from general, this special sales tax.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
All three will be coming from special
Yeah,
sales
because
tax.
it's going to be a Parks and Public Works
Mhm.
truck.
I'm sorry, all three vehicles will be coming from
Yes.
special sales tax.
Yeah.
So can I ask, so there's 2 fire vehicles?
Two fire vehicles, one that was replacing a 2012 that was sold in 2022, and a normal scheduled replacement for 2024, which is replacing a 2017 model.
And what are these vehicles? These are vehicles that,
One
Just
was a 2012 Tahoe that was sold in 2022.
okay,
That was well over 120,000 miles.
was that yours?
That was
The one
old
you drove?
Tahoe that I had.
You drove?
And then the other one's the 2017 that I was driving up until here recently, that is passed down right now to the EMS captain that has been slated for replacement, that has been pushed off. Our scheduled replacement in the fire department is 5 years or 100,000 miles. The 2017 is past 5 years and 110,000 miles per our scheduled replacement. This is replacing a parks vehicle that CE can answer to for that replacement. The closing staff recommends that you authorize me to start the initiation process for the MARC contract process, entering the joint mission forward. That includes 3 vehicles for the amount of $164,888 with the intent to finance or purchase the necessary equipment closer to the time of completion, which is estimated to be between 6 to 10 months down the road. So there's no cost to purchase or start the process tonight. Although the city has the cash on hand to purchase the vehicle currently, staff is recommending entering into either a lease purchase or finance agreement within 60 days of delivery, confirmation of the said vehicles, and adopting a resolution at that time for the purchase of the vehicles and the necessary equipment. It's just found myself or CE can answer any questions that need to be.
So doing this right now will
All we're doing is
consider
locking in
considerable savings.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these diesel or gas?
The 2 for the fire department are going to be gas, and I believe in public works is going to be diesel.
These are through Mark.
These are through the MARC contract.
Mark discount. Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the requisition from the chief for the fire department vehicles and the public works vehicle in the amount of $164,888.
I just have a quick question on the lease agreement or finance. Well, I mean, interest rate wise.
We'll get closer to the time when we come back to the council for that final approval.
Okay.
If you remember, this governing body also adopted the vehicle acquisition fund earlier in the year. That may also be another option. We do have a couple other vehicles that are going in front of Purple Wave that will also bolster that fund. So we will go out and look for finance rates and other alternatives that we may have. We may purchase them directly outright through special sales tax. So we will bring those options to the council as we get the notification from Ford that VIN numbers have been produced, when the estimated delivery dates are and everything else. So we'll give the options to the council.
Yeah, because it may be a better option for us just to buy them outright and not finance or not, not lease, but I second that motion. Thank you.
I agree. If we can buy them outright, because I bought another pickup on Friday. It was 8.2% was the interest rate.
Yeah. Pretty high.
Chief, will you do that math for us?
It's a lot.
I know we did some comparison of we just bought off a lot compared to the market price. And
right.
It was anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 of what we were saving just by locking into the contract price for 2023 for a 2024 purchase.
And Chief, on
Good
this,
job.
it's not tying us to a funding source, but we can change the source later.
Yes, ma'am. All we are doing is just locking in before that we are continuing to purchase these 3 vehicles, and that starts that lock in at that price.
Yep. These are eligible for the sales tax, special sales tax fund, should you so choose to do so. But we'll have that decision making in the next 8 to 10 months, where within we'll know what our finance rate might be, and then you can make an informed decision then.
Right. That was my question.
Yes.
Because I remember setting up that fund recently so that we could do that self-finance stuff.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that to us.
Good.
Anyone have any other questions? Nope. I wrote it down. We have a motion from Councilman Millat and a second from Councilman Scott. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Adcock,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Millat.
Yes.
Item number 5, consider adoption of resolution 2023-09, setting a public hearing date regarding a dangerous and unfit structure at 9812 Cod Drive.
Mayor, I'll call on Lieutenant Brad Todd, who's the supervisor over the Code Enforcement Division.
Mayor, Council, so Resolution 2309 is basically to set a hearing before the governing body to determine if the structure at 9812 Call Drive is dangerous, unsafe, or unfit for humans use or habitation. Should have pictures of it. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's the white building, northwest corner of 98th and Call. It's been vacant for numerous years. In the structure's current state, which includes the roof, rotting and missing fascia boards, missing and broken windows, and just other items that cannot repair. We believe it is unfit for human use or habitation right now. It's vacant inside. They've taken everything out of it. There's nothing inside of it. The owners are actually here. They are on board with this. They want to demolish it. They've been very cooperative. This is basically just a safety net for the city to make sure that things are done in timely fashion and up to certain standards. So all this does is set a hearing date, which will be at the end of October, October 23rd, which they'll be able to come and speak and give you any kind of plans they have, which I have seen already, but it's under review. And that way we can move forward from that the city and they agree with a plan to get rid of it.
And the property owner would be able to address us at that public hearing.
Yeah, that's specifically what the hearing's for. It's for them to
Okay.
come, tell you what if they had other plans for it, if they wanted to approve it as opposed to demolishing it. That's their time to do that, and you guys either agree or disagree with them.
We wouldn't have the city wouldn't incur any expense on any of the demolish or.
So if we were to force demolish it, it would all go back to them. Either they would pay us or go on the tax roll, but we would be reimbursed at some point.
Okay.
But they are cooperating right now, that'd be great to work with, so we won't come to that.
So the procedure will be that they're authorizing a hearing today, hearing date, but the resolution would be in October, but the resolution is now.
So the resolution passes tonight, it goes into the Wyandotte Echo for 2 weeks, this Thursday next. Then you have to wait 30 days after that, which would put us at the October 23rd council meeting. That would be their hearing date where they come and speak to you guys.
I don't see it in here. Are they up to date on their taxes?
I don't know.
Good question. They have a land manager there. I'm going to say, so I suspect that it's been at least managed to the degree it can be. So I would presume that they have paid their taxes, hopefully. I don't know if you mentioned, I'm sorry if I meant, but they've been cooperative. They have somewhat plan. However, we think formal steps need to be taken so that we ensure that plan gets followed through with. And that we're not doing this 6, 10 months, 12 months down the road.
Okay. Make a motion to consider resolution 2023-09, setting a date to conduct a public hearing regarding a dangerous and unfit structure at 9812 Call Drive.
I'm sorry, are you the property owner or? Yeah. Okay. Mayor, this is the property owner apparently is here?
I think that would be appropriate.
This is the discussion phase anyway, right?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
You could, if you'd like to come share with us.
Go ahead and state your name and your address for us, please.
My name is Tony Seaman, and the property I own, 9812 Cod Drive. We took a bid to demolish the property in the spring. We were just trying to see other options, and we finally revised the bid with the demolition company. And they gave us a date around the end of October or 1st of November it'll be done. And we have an agreement. I copied Tom on that. So reason I'm standing up is, would you consider moving the 23rd of October to November? By that time it'll be done. If you don't,
Absolutely.
So he's got a contract.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Why do we even have to act on that? I'm sorry, if it's he's wanting to tear it down, why do we have to have a resolution?
Well, what we're doing is setting a public hearing. If at that public hearing he wants to present documents that would suggest that you give them a different time frame, right? That you could do that. If he has a formal agreement then in October with someone who's going to demolish, a contractor who's going to demolish it, if he has that in October, that then he presents that, and then we say, okay, it sounds like you're going to have this done by November 15th. We'll give you till the end of November, check back with us, staff will give us a report. But what if they don't do it? That's really the next key. If we don't follow through with the formal stuff, then we're behind the 8 ball in the sense that we're now into January, February, and we still haven't done it. That's been our lesson learned over the years.
Yes, we've had this happen.
Yes.
For the date and the timeline, do you already have a contract for the building to be demolished?
Yeah.
And what's the date for that?
In what city?
Well, no, what date?
What's the date for your demolition?
I just said forgive me, he could not give us an exact date because of their workload. And what he said specifically is end of October or beginning of November, he scheduled us for that period. Tim? That's correct.
Yeah.
Tim, me and Tim spoke with them if you need.
We have a signed contract with them.
Okay.
I'm okay with all you guys.
Sure.
said. We're fine.
So we have the signed contract and no date. So I think what would be good moving forward, if everyone agrees, because we have a public hearing to move forward on, if you're able to come to the October meeting and just show us that the contract with the date of the demolition, that would be really, really beneficial and helpful to us.
Yeah.
Be glad to.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a motion and a second, Mayor.
Yep.
So we have oh, I'm sorry. We have a motion from
Me.
Councilman Shriver and a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Adcock,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malott.
Yes. I missed that old one.
Just to clarify, you wouldn't have to take action on that date. You
No.
can bifurcate,
Mhm.
the hearing.
Sure.
That's all it really is. I mean,
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Perfect.
The staff at the PD took the time to build a process map that I will include with my Friday correspondence, so you can see the process and how this works through it by our code of ordinances, okay? And the attorney is absolutely right. We'll have the hearing, but we can set timeframes, we can delay. There's a number of things this policy body can do.
Sounds good. Thank you for coming tonight. It's really helpful to hear from the property owner and know that you're working with the city to move
October
things forward in the
23rd.
right direction.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you
We'll
very
see in a
much.
couple weeks. Item number 6, consider a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319 B1 to discuss personal matters of non-elected personnel. And this one will have our attorney with us, and it is 8:31. I would say to return at 8:45.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Malott, a second from Councilman Shriver. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Adcock,
Yes.
Bishop,
yes.
Malott.
Yes.
I know.
Over your phone, you're a charger.
Oh, no, that's fine. I got one in my office too. And as soon as you said something, I knew exactly what I did.
Well, no.
I was like,
All right, that one I couldn't do.
This conference will now be recorded.
Councilman Malott and a second by Councilman Shriver to return to regular session. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Scott,
yes.
Adcock.
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malott.
Yes.
Okay, item number 7 on the agenda, city manager report. And Chief, I was just going to remind you if you wouldn't mind a quick summary for the tree trimming question that we had earlier.
Yes, we did an extensive amount of research thanks to the city planner, Bradley Hochhaver. Start with the zoning, because that's the most important piece. That particular piece of property and its accessory property is C2. So there's a building up there. It's being used for quite some time as a business. And that accessory property has been used for somewhat forever today, since 1997, absolute, has storage sheds on it. It was an improved piece of property in the sense that it was rocked in some way for parking. So what they used it for is inside storage, like in a shed, and then outside parking, okay? That's a C2, and it's a C2 accessory building. Everything else around there is R2, residential, okay? So there was one piece of property, and we all know he sat there for a long time, and he had a business up there, but that was kind of a special circumstance that if someone else owned that building, they couldn't run a business out of that R2 without an exception, okay? So in a sense, 6th Street is the street that's there, believe it or not. It has not been maintained by the city. However, it's never been formally abandoned. That is a street owned by the city. And at least a year ago, the public works director at the time approved the person there to improve the road by allowing rock to be poured on that road to improve the surface. There was some other things done in the right-of-way there, such as I believe it was described as the steel rails of a railroad were erected upright. It was for some sort of retention or something. Code enforcement discovered that. We don't allow that. We didn't approve that. But we've known that the property has been used as an accessory property as it was intended since 1997, absolute, and for every year thereafter in some form or another. One of the buildings was torn down several years ago. I don't know the exact date, but there's an improved shed there, all inside storage, and the lot is rocked where they park, and they're parking what I would say is vehicles, trucks that are with booms on them. They're about 450s, whatever brand they are, about that. And there's just a few of those, and they're parked outside, which is approved. And they have inside storage, which is approved. And they're not running a formal business from there. Staff encouraged them to get a license for doing business in the city so that they may compete in the city to cut trees and things. But they're not cutting trees. They're not doing any of their work there. Maybe, I don't know if even they're changing their oil. But they have stuff to store inside the shed for security, and they have parking, and both of those uses are historic and approved. And so that's essentially what it comes down to. Now, there's no stop sign at the end of 6, and we propose to CE, Director Goodall, to go ahead and erect that as a safety feature. If you look at the other roads that have been kind of left aside, if you will, not formally abandoned, they have those concrete barriers placed so that you can't drive up and down them. This never did for this reason. It's the only access to that accessory building because of the elevation and the type of rock there is from the main building to the accessory building, 40 feet-ish. So, and there's no road that can be built, I'm sure that could be, but it would be nearly impossible to get a driveway that goes down to that accessory building. And historically, it's been accessed by 6th Street to that building. And that's what they improved with that rock, so they could get access to that accessory building that they've been using for a number of years. So all of those things are approved, and that use is no more than parking, which is allowed, and inside storage.
But it is a city street.
It is and has been a city street. It's never been abandoned. I couldn't find any,
Shouldn't it be hard surface?
Well, yes.
Part of the complaint was dust.
Well, and yeah. So what we understand, again, he's not here to answer himself, so I don't want to indict anybody, but I think it's better than it was, and so that they could use it, they allowed the rock. Now, if you go and somewhat draw a circle in that area, there's a couple of, near Sumner, there's a couple of others, Pacific, the Newton Alley, those were all rock. Okay, so there is some precedence that the city allowed that use at some point, and it didn't change somewhat. That surface was crumbled enough, it was somewhat rock. So putting that on there, it's I suspicion that the director at the time took all those into account and then allowed them to privately improve that public right of way.
Are they the only one that uses that street?
They probably are. However, it's not exclusive. Anybody can drive up and down. Now, you can't go on their private property unless they invite you, of course, but you can drive up and down that road because it is a public road.
So I think the biggest challenge, what I've been hearing from some of the residents up there, is the size of the equipment that they're bringing in, the larger dump trucks with trailers, and then making that tight turn, that it's been getting into Mr. Sauer's fence line and into his driveway. You know, when the gates open, I mean, just like you said about getting onto personal property, they are indeed doing that at different times with their larger trucks and trailers. And it's I think it's the heavy equipment that in that area, because that roadway, I think we've all been on it. It's fairly narrow right in that area, and that incline that we're talking about, it's fairly dangerous as well. And I think that's the other thing that, if it's permissible to have that business in there, then there has to be just some discussions about, protecting the properties of Mr. Sauer and others that, live across the street there.
And that's somewhat of a new piece of the complaint. I knew the stop sign was maybe a problem in the sense that I think people, if they don't see the stop sign, they think they can just roll right through and that sort of thing. And that
Well,
would be at least one piece. But getting into somebody else's property, certainly there's, we could remedy that law enforcement piece of it. Certainly some insurance. I mean, if they damage the fence or something, that could be something that we could do.
Well, just out of respect for Mr. Sauer, I mean, means he's waited here all night. I mean, could he stand up and if he has you have any questions for us at all? You're,
For one thing, in the first place.
Restate your name and your address again for us.
Okay.
Come on up. That's all right.
John Sauer, 603 High Street. All right. In the first place, when that office building was built, I've been there that long, and they come to the neighborhood, and they just wanted the office building built. And they had a special meeting, and we all went to it. They never see High Street whatsoever, and come off of Fifth Street, off K32 to Fifth Street.
Yep.
Somewhere or another, somebody let them build that garage back there, which we were never addressed that ever. And that street, you call it, which is, I've been told 40 different ways, that street went to the left to that two-story house of the old Quinlan place. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about.
mm-hmm.
Then when they built that garage, the people that owned the house wasn't using it, so they went to the right to the garage, and that was that. Well, my opinion, I don't have a problem with the street trimming service. And like you said, it's just more convenient for them to drive through my neighborhood. But they should, if that garage had a permit, you would have thought the people running the city at the time would have said, okay, you can put this garage in as long as you stay in here commercial property, which they never did, and they let them do this. Now, like I said, you can say they're just using it for parking, but their employees show up every morning, report there, they get in their trucks, they go out on the job, they come in the evening, get in their vehicles and leave. Now, to me, that's running a business out of that place. It ain't just parking. So, and when Neighbors Construction sold that, I come down here along with some of my neighbors, requested the council to not let them put anything else there. Now, when this new business, the truck sales business, bought it, it has not been used until this tree trimming service come in there, which was about a year ago. They come in and put some gravel down there, clean the place up a little bit, and I was told the city didn't even know they were there until just here 2 months ago or whatever when I come up down here. Now, whether they were, I don't know that either. Yeah. But anyway, they're running a business out of there. They, even that guy's trying to tell me, I'm not running a business. I'm just, nowadays with cell phones, your office could be your truck. I'm just saying they're coming in every day and they're leaving every day. But that's your decision. I'm just down here to, let you know what's actually going on up there. So, and, like I said, if it's a street, which they finally, after all these years, I've finally got somebody saying it's a street, then they come up and say, well, it's an unmaintained street, which, like you said, there's maybe an alley or somewhere around here. they're gonna have a commercial business there, if you are gonna let them do it, then to me, you know, asphalt it or do something, because every time they pull them trucks in and out of there, there's just a big old dust bowl comes out there along with everything else. So anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
CE, do we have an idea what the weight limit on that little street is? I mean, high and fifth right there? We probably don't have a, never have. Right. I mean, that's have probably a core sample and see, but that might be a way of determining. Yeah, well, that might be a way of eliminate some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's, yeah.
I wrote that down. So, yes, we will investigate that as, yeah, the street is in poor condition, but in order not to be a city street, because it has been, I mean, there are legal proceedings in which this council has to take to do that. Now, if you close that and then you don't allow it to become a private drive, actually what would happen is, I think there's 3 different property owners parcels, right? Some would be granted to one and some would be granted to the other. And therefore you would need some sort of, agreement, an easement to make a drive through there, because I think they would maybe could seek some remedy. I'm not speaking, I'm just on common sense terms, that if the city wouldn't allow them access to their accessory building that they historically had access to, then maybe they would seek some remedy.
So was that street a smooth street at some point? It never was?
No, maybe the day they built it.
What the?
You look on Wyandotte County maps and that street's listed there, 6th Street, and it goes right to that garage, and that's.
I think Mrs. Sauer mentioned that at one point, maybe it went to something else, and then
Yeah.
just as part as that development came in. But again, that's existed since easily 1997. We know that for a fact. And those buildings have been on there. Now, whether it was the owner of that, neighbors, or whomever was using it, they were doing something with it to the degree they tore one of them down. So that's been used. Now, as far as the question of whether that's a business or not, they can park there and go drive their vehicles away. No different, you can park in your driveway and drive your vehicles away, or have someone else do it for you. So the sense of, does this technically mean that they're running a business? We can solve that by, we've encouraged them to get a business license and they've agreed to do so. So that solves that, if it's even in question. But I think technical definition that they're not collecting any funds or doing really any business operations out of there, technically. So, but could they, in some sub way be doing? Yes, it's possible. Therefore, that's what we talked to them about. That's what we suggested, that if nothing else, they could do business here in the city by having a license, and it covers them by doing that. That's an accepted use on that C2 property. No matter what's been done early on, C2 was their zoning designation, and these are all approved uses. So what we really have to address very quickly, heavy truck traffic. I didn't realize they weren't just the dump bucket trucks, those sorts of things. We got long trailers. We're getting into private property, maybe damaging fence lines or getting close. We'll take another look at that stuff and see if there's another way to address it. There may be that we have to cut back on some of the visual of the intersection, right? Maybe the side triangles are bad. Maybe the way it was originally designed, that when the private person modified that road, it isn't done right, where there's better side triangles, there's better maneuverable room. Maybe it's so narrow that we'll go take a look at it. We'll make decisions informed that way. We'll just have to, just take a better look. But as far as the business, as far as that location, these things are actually valid, they're lawful. Okay?
Can we keep Mr. Sauer informed on what your findings are?
Absolutely. And he's talked to code enforcement at least a couple times, and he's not afraid to come here, and we know him very well, so we'll be happy to talk to him.
Thank you.
But still, one thing, you're still going into a residential neighborhood to get to that.
Yeah, and
I didn't hear what he said.
You're still going into a
and I think that's more to
Yeah.
do with the heavy traffic. It's not illegal to drive up and down public streets. So whatever, unless the vehicle is somewhat causing it to be illegal, such as overweight. So we're gonna look at that. And we can inform the property user owner of that as well, is that if he has trucks there that can't lawfully drive up and down there for some reason, whatever that reason might be, we can inform them of that as well. And maybe they can cut that piece of it back. Okay?
One other thing,
Well, we've got to kind of, we're getting late in the night, so I think it might be better to follow up
Yeah.
with staff afterward. Let's make sure, maybe we can get an appointment on the schedule for this next
City
week
planner
or
and the
so.
code enforcement officer together. Let's have a nice talk with John.
I think that would be good, because I don't know if we're gonna get all of the stuff figured out tonight, but we definitely want to find a good solution for the residents and the folks living there, so. Did you have anything else on your?
I don't have anything else, ma'am. One thing, very quickly, I'm so sorry. It was just brought to my attention that we have new people doing new things, and I apologize. But the check register, not the register report, but the department reports in your financials are from 2022. They got the date on. So we will correct those. I will send those out by email tomorrow. My apologies. It looked like we were doing good in our budget last year.
And that'll be updated with the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, we'll get it all together.
That changes everything.
Your questions are different.
Start
now.
the meeting over.
But I don't think having staff has any other thing to report. It's all in our weekly updates and in your packet, so thank you very much.
Councilman Scott.
Oh, our hot shot newsletter, question mark.
Yeah, we had illness at staff. We just couldn't get to it. That's what we're working on. Staff is back in the office, and we're full staff somewhat. That's what it could be, and we're going to work on that next. Partly as we, mid budget, we have two people that are primary. So some of that's relearning how they did their formulas and things like that. So
it was very helpful for a lot of us, including myself. So it was.
My apologies.
No, I know, I understand, and as long as we have a plan, we're gonna try to continue it though, right?
Yes, we have a staff assigned, and that has all the credentials that they need. We're just gonna assemble some of the stories, if you will, and try to do our best.
Yeah.
We're gonna mainly focus on agendas and things like that in upcoming meetings.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I know it's beneficial for a lot of people. I mentioned this either 2 weeks ago or a month ago about, when our citizens have comments, they typically, we don't get a chance to make comments or have comments or address them or even city staff. So I highly recommend, or how do I make a motion or whatever we got to do, a proposal to, add to agenda offer, or directly after the comments from the public, we add comments from staff and or council directly after the citizens make their statement.
I'll address that really
Okay,
quickly,
thank you.
because that's kind of a mayor meeting dynamic. And one thing that was explained to me when I came here, because I had the same question, I said I feel so awkward with
Them.
residents coming forward and I can't say anything.
Yeah.
And what was explained to me was basically, since we have an agenda, that would be potentially adding items to our agenda that the rest of the community would not know about. So we would be entering into discussion that the community wouldn't have any knowledge of beforehand. And so they said that's why it's really best practice to not respond. We give them their time, but then also that can really deter a meeting and would add a whole dynamic to getting into discussion that we're not prepared with the answers for. And that's why a lot of times what actually Mr. Webb asked me to do is just refer to staff and say, please follow up with that information. So it doesn't put us in a liability type of situation, and then we're not adding items to our agenda that the rest of the community wasn't.
It just feels so awkward.
It's really awkward. And I can try to make a point to explaining it a little bit better beforehand, because I completely understand this.
Yeah, it just really feels awkward not being able to comment when we think we know the answer, or we make, be able to nip it in the rear end a little bit. But I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Shriver?
First of all, CE, I spoke with you a little bit before the meeting. I want to commend you and your staff on at least the city park is what I saw down there, where they have laid rock, or you had it laid at the ends of the bridge. All that stuff is kind of cleaned up there, and different drainage areas down there. The park looked fantastic. I think it was cut today, or I don't know when, yesterday. but looks really nice. That just really cleaned up a lot of those drainage areas where there was old rock, but you could hardly see any of it. Oh, thank you. No, it looks really, really nice. And, we got our Autumn Fest here. Ooh, is it next week? Next week?
23rd?
I've lost track. 2 weeks. Sorry,
Way
2
too
weeks.
far for me to see it, but-
Right, I know, 2 weeks. So
Sorry,
anyway,
23rd.
was there going to be any chance of getting that parking lot done?
No.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
The availability of contractors to get that bid
I
out
know.
and have
That-
them come to a meeting. It was
Right.
So if that's a priority of the council.
No.
you can
It's
always
not.
do it.
It's not. Just
Schedule for spring.
didn't have any idea. Right.
Yeah.
It just, we're down there every other week at the Harvesters.
Yes.
Been there for several things, and it just could use some attention.
That whole area needs a little bit of attention.
Right. Want to thank Chief Whittem, CE, all of the department heads that have anything to do with the budget, have anything to do with the reports that you bring to us, staffing considerations. I've said this before, 10 years I've been up here, 10, 11 years, I have lost track, 10 years. Never have I denied a raise. And I would not do that to staff here. They work hard, they deserve their raises. But every staff member here needs to know, whether you live in Edwardsville or not, we as a council up here have got an obligation to take care of our residents as well. So it's a very, very slippery slope to decide what is the best decision. Like I mentioned, nobody wins up here. We've got to come to an agreement, and we may not all think the same, but I think we drive towards the same purpose. And I've said it before, where we can all get creative. Everybody got creative tonight. And I think it helped us all come to a good decision. And knowing that next year we can revisit things, we can revisit items. It's better to do it that way. Hire all these people and figure out, wait a minute, what are we doing? Instead, we cautiously approach next year. Look, I had another. I thought I had something else to mention. What did I say? Oh, well, I'm not going to ask it now because I had a couple of questions about the statement of bills. So it doesn't matter. I was going to ask about the,
If it's related to departments, that's the only thing that's impacted. So the statement of the bills themselves are correct.
oh, are they?
Yeah, I believe so. The department reports are from department expenditures last year.
Oh, gotcha. So it was for the general administrative services. What is that?
You know what?
Professional services, sorry. Professional services, page 3. Negative 28,000. Was that something, do you see the negative? Towards the bottom of the page. The
I'm on page 3.
general administrative expenses.
Okay, so these would be from, okay, yes. These are from, if you look up there for the period of 1/22 to 8/20.
Please disregard any of my
Please
questions.
disregard. If you
Please
have questions
disregard.
after tomorrow, I'll get you these.
I was looking up at the right-hand corner. That had 23 on it, so, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That's.
Okay, gotcha. No
Yes,
worries.
that's print date. These.
I had several questions, so no,
Whoever queried it.
Gotcha.
Staff just missed.
we're all human. We are all human. That's all I have, so thank you all, council. I enjoy working with everybody up here. It's nothing personal, it's all professional up here. Thank you.
Councilman Lott?
I'll tell you the same thing.
Thank you.
Sometimes we don't agree, but we did come to a medium.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the horns are still blowing, so don't even mention that.
I'm gonna record that, and it's not gonna be a race sound. Sorry about the phone. I thought I had it off. I'm kind of upset. Still thinking racing. The budget, I am in agreement with Mr. Scott, and I mean, I'm sorry that it took so long to do this. I want the best for our employees, and I realize that it is a little bit of a burden. I don't think it's that, personally, I don't think it's that big of a burden on our local residents. It is the county that's grabbing the money from you. We still have to make the money to survive here. And I think that when you pick your phone up and you dial 911, Councilman Bishop said this, you want a firefighter, you want a police officer, you want somebody there to help you. And if we don't manage this money properly, we won't have that anymore. You'll be on that 911 and you'll be waiting for a long time. So that's the quandary that I'm in when I'm trying to work with these budgets. And I've been here a long, long time, and we have lowered the mill, we have lowered the mill, we have lowered the mill. Eventually, we're not going to be able to. Eventually, we're going to get caught back, or we're going to get caught in a trap on it. And then we're going to have to bite the bullet, and we're really going to have to do something. I want to really commend Chief Whittam and CE on the sacrifices that they've offered tonight to help us come to a conclusion and to a decision. We need the works person. We don't need part-time, we need full-time. And when you get compliments from the public of how nice the park looks, how good the streets are looking, we've spent a lot of money on 2nd Street, Speaker Road. I've drove them today. They're really good. We're making progress on these streets. Residents come in here and if you get on the Facebook thing, you're always in trouble because you don't do the streets, you don't do this, you don't. Well, we are doing this. And we're trying to do that for taxpayers as much money as we can. Eventually, you're not going to be able to afford some of these improvements that you're making. So if you're around for a while, I think it'll finally come to you. But anyway, thank you guys for what you did. And Chief, I'm going to say Chief Mark, thank you for the extra effort that you've put in. So budget will start again next year. If I'm here, I'll be here. If I'm not here, I won't be here. So I drove through the cemetery today. Looks great. It looks really good. I drove through in the rain, a little bit of mist out there, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think I can live up here for a while. So eventually I'll probably be laying up there. But it does look good. And I think, is it White's that does that?
Yeah,
my wife says, would you quit talking like that? Is it White's Lawn that does that?
Yeah.
I think they need, I'll see Garrett, and I will tell him that I really appreciate the efforts that they do up there. I said that I drove Speaker to the end. There's still a little bit more you said today. I think it's really cool. Those people out there deserve that because they were driving basically on a country dirt road. And 2nd Street, I didn't drive down it, but I looked down it and it looks great. So I'm very thrilled and excited that some of these street projects are really coming to fruition. So, and I won't say anything about, yes, I will, silent crossings. Chief, I was mentioning to you today about the wire that was hanging low. Did you have a chance to see CE about that?
No.
It's on 102nd, and there's more of them. It's at 15 North 102nd on the west side of the road. That one of those big fat cables is hanging clear down to the top of the fence, and it's got a box that's down there. I mean, you can walk up and get in that box if you want to. It looks like there's a telephone pole just missing between two of them.
It was cut down.
I think it's just tied up to whoever's fence that is, Androvich's fence or something, but somebody's gonna get in there. I don't know what that is, but it would be curious for me if I was 18 years old and wonder what was in that box. But there's several of them around Edwardsville that are hanging low. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And I do have pictures of it here if you want to see them. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. But, that's all I have. Thank you guys for all your effort on the budget preparation.
Councilman Bishop?
Thanks for 98th Street, K32. Thanks for getting that taken care of. That's pretty cool. And I went up Speaker Road the minute they were driving away, and I caught everything that was left behind in my tires, but it's really a nice road. I did. I cleaned it up for them. Luckily, I was getting new tires the next day anyway, but it looks really good. In 2nd Street, I went down that. That's pretty nice how they're doing that. Are they got something going on with the whistle there when you're coming out? I mean, are they going to grade that down
Where at?
at Speaker Road? 100.
I don't think we had any,
Anything in there?
any intentions of it.
Anything? Okay.
Are you feeling a bump there?
No, well, yeah. If you go, you could. It kind of drops down right there.
You're talking right at 110?
Yeah, right at the apron right there.
I'll go look at it.
Yeah.
When we drove it, I didn't notice anything major.
Yeah, I was just wondering because today with the torrential rains, I didn't go back up there today, but I just think somebody turns too sharp, they're going to be in the ditch there. But it does look good though. Looks real nice. That's all I got.
Councilman Adcox?
I don't have anything, other than thank you to everybody that was willing to shift things around. Thank you for all the hard work for the staff, and that's it.
Let me see that, Garrett.
Quick update
Oh, yeah,
on
I
our
saw that.
recent mobile pantry. That was last Saturday. Again, we had record numbers of registrants. We had 210 families signed up. We served 891 people, approximately 7,000 pounds of food. And I did ask this time to confirm that that's by far the majority of those folks are coming from right here in Edwardsville. Few are coming over from Bonner Springs, few from KCK, but it's by far serving Edwardsville people. Wanted to thank our staff, especially for the creative solutions to help us find consensus up here and work toward the same goal. And I appreciate everybody kind of putting their head together and working toward that. It took a while, but we got there. I wanted to mention a couple of folks have mentioned up here the streets, and that is always a #1 priority for Edwardsville residents. A few years ago, we were able to put together a street plan, and we've been following through with that plan, using that plan to determine which roads are addressed when, and which ones need priority, which ones we can budget. One thing that I wanted to make though, that when we get the additional sci-fi funds that I and Commissioner Stites had worked and advocated for in the county level, that is in addition to the city's investment in our streets, not to diminish our city's investment, as that is a priority of our residents. And it's really, really exciting to see those investments starting to pay off, that the city is starting to invest in our streets. I think the people are really impressed in seeing their neighborhoods start to look better and start to be a lot more drivable on an everyday basis. So thank you for getting those projects going and following up on them, making sure they're finished out. The last thing I wanted to mention is that today is Patriots Day, September 11th, and wanted to take a minute and just thank you for our first responders here. I know we have a lot of first responders that aren't here tonight, and so hopefully our chiefs will pass the thank you along. There's very little thanks for the line of service that the men and women in Edwardsville sign up for every day, and so a lot of those are putting their life on the line for us, and so I just wanted to take a minute and thank you guys for your service to our city.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
The budget documents that we need to sign, they need to be reworked because we got that hybrid in there. The numbers, we'll have to fix them. But this needs to be signed and submitted before the 20th. So we're going to work on it hard tomorrow. I know we've already been in the worksheets, and it's very expansive, and it's somewhat locked down by the previous user. So I'm going to be communicating with him how to get into access the sheets and make the necessary changes to the 3/4 mil reduction. Because right now it shows a full mil or the half. So that's what I'll be doing the next couple of days. So we'll reach out and say, can you come in and make sure we get these signed, since we don't have a meeting between now and then. Okay.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
You want to finish my water?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, I'm just heading out for you.
Shouldn't have finished mine. I got to pee.